Hello, everyone. I know it's been a hot minute, but it's so difficult trying to find time to get um, one of these recorded. But you can see I've kind of put myself in a corner here and I'm trying to get this done. So this is actually an audiobook. So I got to show you the cover on my phone. You can see it. It's called Over My Dead Body, and its subtitle is Unearthing the Hidden History of America's Cemeteries by Greg Melville. So what I love about this book, it was so serendipitous as to what I was doing when I was listening to this book. Now, this is from the Curiosity, the Morbidly Curiosity. I think that Morbid Curiosity. I'll have to look it up. Book club, and they have all these great selections on books about things that we are interested in, curious, that are kind of morbid. So you can't just come out and be like, "Hey, so how do you think your funeral's going to look? Have you thought about where you're getting buried?" So, what Greg Melville does, and he's my kindred spirit. So, Greg, if you're seeing this and you happen to be in the central New York area, I would love to go show you where I was when I was listening to this book. So, I was actually in um, the cemetery where my grandparents, my great grandparents, and my great 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 paternal grandparents are. I've been doing genealogy for the past year, I guess, and I'm finding out where they're buried now. And I had a lot of help from my cousins on my father's side of the family, so I was able to find their graves. And I want to thank every person who has taken a picture of a headstone and put it on Find a Grave on the website. Your heroes. It's so nice to have a picture of it so that when I go look in these lots, because they'll be like, oh, lot 24, and like lot 24 is an acre. So I really appreciate you showing me what the headstone looks like, where it is in the plot as well. So he does the history of burial grounds. And what piqued his interest was he was in his senior year in college a grave digger. So he would work in a cemetery, take care of the lawn. And, when you're around death and you're around grief and you're around the process, you start asking some questions. So it's just been something that he and his family do, and they're kind of tired of it. So shout out to Greg's wife and kids for putting up with it. But again, I'm the person who has always found peace and solace in a cemetery. My son's lacrosse team practices next to one, and that usually starts around Memorial Day. So I go through there, just say thank you to the veterans, just pay some respects there. But there are different kinds of cemeteries, and this is why you feel creeped out in some New England cemeteries because of the way they were designed for their time period. Why, if you've been to Arlington, you are just in awe about it. And then some are made to look like the suburbs. So he covers Shawsheen Cemetery in Massachusetts, the 1607 burial ground in Jamestown, Virginia, um, Monticello's African American graveyard. And I was so happy that he did not ignore or gloss over how people of color's burials and resting places have been treated in our society. Goes to the Laurel Grove Cemetery in Savannah, Georgia, Midnight in the Garden of Evil, Central Park, which you may not have known. And that one I was waiting. I was like, is he going to tell the real story about how Central Park? And he did. Okay. So look that up. And of course, the famous one, no, Green Lawn in California and Hollywood, and there are different places. So if you've ever been creeped out by a New England cemetery, that's because they were designed to be very natural. They didn't plow over trees. If there was a space underneath the tree, they put your body there, but they were certainly not going to cut down the tree. So it feels very natural, but because these cemeteries are now so old, they're, the trees are a little sinister looking. Um, and it just takes on a whole different feeling. So that was by design. It was just like we're returning to nature. And then he talks about Arlington, which um, I hope you know that we took back from that trader, Robert E. Lee, and why it's beautiful, has the military precision, who's buried there. They're running out of space now, so that leads to questions: who gets to be buried there? Veterans in general, or veterans who have seen combat, or people who have died in combat? So a lot of questions there. And he does go on to question about the future, because, a lot of religious rules have dictated how we are buried. And I think that there have been some contradictory rules. It's always in the Christian Judeo sense. At one point you couldn't be cremated because your body was supposed to be ready for Jesus return, judgment day, so you could just go as your form. But he's Jesus. Can't he put me to get back together? Also, you have to put the person's remains in the ground. And I personally know someone who struggled with this because the Catholic Church is saying in the ground, in the ground, in the ground. And her family member made it clear, I want to be cremated and I don't want to be in the ground. Decide where you're going to put me. Talked about embalming. The Civil War was where embalming really started. I'm so old, I remember my, grandmother would use the term parlor, and that has changed to living room, and there's a reason why it's changed to the living room. So there are all these things that we just don't think about being part of the funeral industrial economy, as he refers to it. It's just incredible how much of our philosophy and look at life is based on how we look at death. Um, I have a close friend whose husband is a funeral director, and I want to be cremated. They do talk about the natural burials, but there's where you literally decompose in the ground. There are worms on you. There's no embalming. There's no coffin. You just kind of return to the earth. But that is limited because you can't just have bodies upon bodies. So you just go from this journey from the catacombs of Europe to the natural cemeteries of New England to our colonial times, where you just kind of, if you had a chance to bury them, you buried them. Sometimes, if you were being chased, you couldn't bury them. To the Civil War, to embalming, so that the bodies could travel back to their families, and to present day with cremation and the pretty suburban cemeteries that we see. I do have my paternal grandmother's family is in one of those places. So I really did appreciate the fact that he explained why things were the way they were and made you think. You really did think about what's the end going to be like. And of course, I'm watching A Fault in Our Stars. And, in the end, when she's talking about, I've decided that the funerals are for the living and not the dead. What do you want to put your family through? My in-laws were big into, not having my husband or his siblings have to decide everything. So they have everything pre-planned, but now they've changed the plan because, where they were when they made the plan, they're not there anymore and nobody lives there anymore. So now they have a cemetery plot for both of them that they can either donate to the church or see if somebody wants to buy it. But, for my own, I would, and doing my genealogy and having a place to leave flowers on my second great grandmother's anniversary of her death. In a couple of days, my great grandmother's birthday is. So I have a stone to go and leave flowers there and say, something to her. But, I would be thinking of them regardless. I am the last person living in this area. When I'm gone or when I move, there's going to be no one there to take flowers to them. So I don't want to burden my family with having to pick a spot for me that they're going to be chained to for the rest of their lives. So my thought, and I was told no, but maybe, fingers crossed, by the time it is my time, it might be legal, but cremate me, have a celebration of my life, because I'm not a boring person. I'm not a person who wants to be revered, but like have a little party, favor bags of my ashes, and then just take my ashes and you can keep them if you want to. Um, you can, but I would just love you to just scatter me wherever you think I would be happy. New Orleans, that would be a happy place for me. But my friend's husband says, we can't have people taking human remains out of the funeral home. So, that is my idea. Just take a little party bag of me and just spread me around. But apparently the law says differently. So, Greg Melville, I really enjoyed your book. I recommend it. If you just wonder why some cemeteries give you the creeps and some you're just like, this is nice. I could stay here for eternity. So thank you, Greg Melville. Contact me if you're ever in central New York State. I'd love to take you to see where uh, my ancestors are buried. So like, share, and subscribe if you made it through this wonderful talk on death. Thank you.